Pump it.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to JAG Media Podcast, episode 24. We are back after.
Toby,
How good is this? 3 in a row.
We're in a row. Look out.
3 in a row.
Back on track.
Back on fucking track, which is good. Yeah, I've actually enjoyed the last two, which is sometimes it was hit and miss in the early days.
Yep.
But now I think starting to find our voice and, still early doors, but here we go.
Anything you're doing anything right. Like the more you do it, the more content you get about it, the consistency, everything like that. So I remember the first early days when I was speaking on it, I was so nervous on the podcast. I was fucking shaking in front of you guys. So it's funny. Very, very funny. But yeah.
And it's
anything right? Go.
I was gonna say it's weird because all we were doing was we were just having a chat. Like nothing's changed.
Yeah, but I think in the early days when you're not comfortable with a camera in front of your face and knowing that it's going to go out to people, I think that there's just an adjustment period. But I think we're comfortable now, and I suppose it helps that no one watches anyway. So. And look, all part of the process. I mean, we'll look back on these times in years to come, and really, it'd be a fun story to tell. Where we've come from to where we are. So
exactly, and it goes back to the Hormozy thing. We're just and everything we talked about today is just honing the craft.
Yep,
just honing the craft. Like, if we think about it, before we might as well go off on a tangent early doors.
Love tangents.
Like, what some of the things that we've in our lives gone down rabbit holes, right? So we've got futsal, soccer. There's not a whole heck of a lot where you actually go down a full rabbit hole, right? So you're at How Can Jimmy, Ants with the army and with gyms and everything in between, but there was no real sort of rabbit holes. Do you know what I mean?
Rabbit holes.
What do you? As in, like you're seeing something long term,
whether it be work, whether it be a hobby, whatever it is. There's only, I think, in our lives we'd only get a handful of them that we spend like hours upon hours, like 10,000 hours on. You can't, right? Because that's a significant amount of time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think was the Bill U pod that I actually watched today with Hormozy. He said that I get frustrated because I want to do everything.
Yeah.
But I can't do, like, I can literally do anything I want, but I can't do everything.
Yeah.
So I can do anything. I can pick any one thing out of everything in the world. But back to what you're saying, I can only choose a specific few things in the amount of time that I'm here. If you were here for forever, you could do everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's true. You're 100% right. It's just like anything, relationships, work, what doesn't matter. You'll go down very few rabbit holes. I agree.
Yeah. Good segue into relationships. So I wanted to talk a little bit about today's topic is all about extreme ownership in your relationship. And start with Jimmy. We won't go youngest to oldest, but Jimmy, you've got the longest relationship that any of us have had. Obviously, the last few weeks we've spoken about this sort of theme of extreme ownership, and it's obviously been a part. What have you done over the course of 14 years? Is it?
Yeah, 14 years.
14
Way
years.
too long. Way too long.
Where does taking ownership of that? Where does it?
I think. I mean, obviously,
what do you?
17 when we got together. So, say it again.
Give us the tools. Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
To sustain that.
I think. Well, I mean, for me, I don't. Well, 17. So, in terms of dating as an adult, very foreign to me. So, I can't really speak on the dating scene. But from my experience, I don't understand the purpose of dating if it's not for a long-term future. So when we went into it, I suppose even though we were a young age, we kind of knew and outlined the expectations, the things that we kind of wanted from the relationship, the vision for our future. and all of those things relatively early on, which, I suppose can be uncomfortable, but ultimately, in my opinion, we just spoke about going down rabbit holes. You're not going to have that many long-term relationships in your life. So for me, I wanted to be a father young, and that was always my dream, my ambition to be a dad, and I knew that early on. I don't know what it was. A lot of people want to travel, a lot of people want to do it. For me, that was my North Star. So, my goal was to find a partner that would complement, that vision effectively. And we set out strong foundations. We had, don't get me wrong, our relationship has evolved a lot. But we set out strong foundations, beliefs, things we believed in, our ethics and our core principles and all the rest of it. Really, really, we established those things early on in our relationship. And a lot of people want the superficial, the surface level things to be aligned, like your hobbies or your TV shows, and for that, it's all by the by. I can give a little and take a little in those areas of my life, but they're not for us that, they weren't the important things that would have made or break the relationship. It was, do you want to have children? Do you want to get married? You want to buy a house? All of those things. It's funny, actually, career has come a lot later in our lives. Like, I was 21 when I joined Houken, but I came from blue collar to white collar, literally just an opportunity. It wasn't like I went to uni and this is what I want to do. None of that. Like, Claire's now 31, 32 nearly, and she's still got 2 years left on a midwifery degree, which it took her to her late 20s to understand or to figure out what it is that she actually wanted to do with her life from a professional level.
Yeah.
I think the big, in my opinion, there's two really big things. It's like your values and your beliefs and what you want in a relationship. As long as those major things are aligned, you can work everything else out. And then secondly, the relationship's gone in seasons. There's been consistent growth. So we were young people, and then we experienced things in life separately and collectively, and our life, evolved and moved forward. And based on those experiences, we grew, and we always grew together.
Yeah.
I always leveled her up, and she always leveled me up. So by growing together, it made it easy for to commit to that person. I have seen other relationships whereby one part of the relationship, one half of the relationship is ready to kind of move forward or move to the next phase in life, and the other one isn't quite ready yet, and that's where the tension comes in. And although it's not realistic to say to someone you need to change now, so that obviously needs to be a period of time. At the same token, if that person isn't making concerted effort to meet you at that next kind of phase, at that next level, that's where the friction starts. And if there's a long enough period, I get why relationships fall apart in those phases, because they are hard. The growth is hard, but ultimately it's necessary, because if you're the same person you are today, in 20 years, you've kind of wasted 20 years, really.
Yeah.
And as your relationship evolves, especially like getting married, buying a house, merging your finances, getting married, having children, like all of those things, you aren't going to be the same people. It's a silly expectation in my mind, because the things you experience in life, they change you, they do. And as I said, our core values have never really wavered. So as long as those things remain intact, everything else in a relationship can kind of, you can work through it over time. Obviously you got trust and communicate, all of those things. You've got to really create that space. It's about boundaries. It's about setting the expectations. But again, it's hard when you don't do it early.
Yep.
Or obviously, the other person isn't willing to change. But I think setting the boundaries, and the outline that you want. And I'm not saying first date type stuff, but I'm saying early in a relationship.
That's a fucking
Obviously need
date and a half.
to establish.
I was going to
Interesting.
touch on that, actually. I was actually going to touch on that when you finished up there. It's like a lot of like relationships these days, they don't want to know. They're not really up for those conversations. And especially when I was younger, when I look back when I was younger, you're getting like, when I look at my like high school girlfriend, obviously we weren't really thinking long term when I was 13, 14 years old. And we're not establishing those conversations. But as we got older, bickering and fighting, you know how high school relationships are, and they end like that. But as I get older and I got into my other relationships, they don't want to have those conversations straight away. As I'm glad you elaborated on, because they don't want to have those conversations. And of course you do have them. Definitely not first date things like, oh, you want kids? You're already getting up out of the fucking door. Like shit. We're not talking about kids right now, bro. I don't even know don't even know what you do for a living, type thing. But yeah, I'm glad you touched on it, because it definitely needs to be in an early stage, but definitely not too early, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But I think also, like, if for me, I mean, I haven't dated ever in my adult life, never dated, right? But for me, if someone isn't willing to have those conversations, automatically it would be a red flag. It would be, it would be something that for me would stop me from progressing, because our goals, my goals, my values, the things that I want from this life are clearly not aligned with yours.
Yeah.
So why would I waste your time, and why would I allow you to waste mine?
Yeah.
And that's straight away where and again, I understand that I'm probably different to most, but I do also think though that everyone has these expectations in life. Like whether you want kids now or whether you want them at 35, right? I'm sure at 20, you're going to know now's not the right time, right?
Yeah.
It's about the conversation. Like the hard conversations are the important conversations. You can't just sweep shit under the rug. We've seen that firsthand how that relationship goes. And the only, my parents, I've seen it firsthand that along the way, the relationship sours and gets to a point where it's not salvageable.
Yeah.
So, and again, look, no one's perfect. No relationship's perfect. I just think that if your values and the important things are there, if the relationship's built on trust, respect, love, you can be malleable. You can be patient with someone. You can, give them a period of time, to level up and all the rest of it, or to follow the lead. And then obviously in turn, when they do, because I think it ebbs and flows. I think it has to, because I've got to be happy, you've got to be happy, but we also need to make each other better. We also need to make each other happy, in a way. We've got to be happy by ourselves and then happy when we're together. So I just think having those hard conversations, again, not first date, but ultimately, you pick a period, and I suppose putting a number on it is hard, because I'm sure it's a feeling, you know what I mean? Like you get to know someone, but if you can't have deep conversations, even from, realistically, when people get drunk, they love these D&Ms, right? For me, I don't know why people can't have D&Ms every day of the week.
Yeah.
We're doing it right now.
Yeah.
If I can't have that D&M, if I can't have that meaningful conversation, especially with a potential life partner, if I can't speak to them about it, then I can't speak to anyone. So that's our relationship in a nutshell.
I've got a few things that came up out of that I want to pick your brain about. Hopefully I won't pick your brain too much, but if it's
relationship expert, hey, Jesus Christ.
Well, look, I honestly don't mind if it's a Jimmy show, because if it's a show tonight, because like it's stuff that I'm not. Firstly, we know self-awareness is a massive thing. It's got to come right after you decide to take ownership, because if you're not self-aware, then you don't know what forest you're in. You don't know if you're trekking in the right jungle. You don't know if you're climbing the right tree in the right jungle, etc. So were you self-aware of this at the start, or was it something that developed over time, particularly with Claire, or was it something that you brought to the
So
relationship?
what, self-aware of what exactly?
Self-aware of needing to have values aligned, needing to have open communication, needing to, or was it something that you learnt along the way of
I
the?
think I think there's a bit of both, because you might know certain things or think you understand certain things, but of course, as you learn those things, there's always different, nuances.
Yeah.
But ultimately, yes, when I went into a relationship, well, this relationship, you know, I saw things in Claire that I didn't have myself. Like her steely determination, her will to her will and desire to like never quit. Something I don't have as much as she does, and it's something I really admire in her. And ultimately, for me, as I said, when I was young, like even late teens, being a father was high on my priority list. So I went into it going, if I'm going to date someone, there is not the expectation, but there is the chance that this could be the person that I'll spend hopefully the rest of my life with. So I dated on, I approached Cleo back on that premise, really. I don't know if we established those things from the get-go. And the other thing there is, when we first started that, I was a very different person. So I was in a relationship before. It wasn't the best relationship. In my first relationship, 8 months, wasn't, but we're at school, so it's very different again.
Built on sex.
Out of school and in school. Hey?
It was built on sex.
100% was, right? But we didn't have anything in common. We didn't have core values or beliefs, that aligned. And ultimately, it wasn't a great experience, but I took the approach of just, full trust, letting her do whatever. So when Claire and I first got together, I actually tried to control the relationship a lot more than I should have. And I wasn't the best boyfriend. Hands up there, 100%. But along the way, one, it wasn't aligned with who I knew I was. I felt I had to be this way from my prior experience. But then I learned, and this was subconscious, but now I can articulate it better. I learned that my past trauma my past experience shouldn't affect my current relationship. And then, our relationship again evolved, and we moved past that initial phase and into the current relationship we have now. And then I suppose in a way it kind of helped too that we had a lot of, my parents splitting up, her parents splitting up, then we bought a house, or maybe we bought it, and then we miscarried a couple of times, then we got married and we miscarried, so there's a lot of big events that kind of we needed to lean on each other, and that really helped us kind of mesh and grow. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. It does, and it makes sense that half of it that you would have the awareness of what you needed to bring. Because
that's from my end though, right? Yeah. I can't speak for her, but
no, obviously not. But I feel like you can only ask. If you want to get her in, you can get her in. But I'm sure she's busy.
Definitely.
But the other point, like with everything that you guys have gone through, it makes sense that it comes from lessons as well.
Yeah.
The other two things you said, you framed it perfectly for me. So we're obviously in business, and we've all owned and run businesses and stuff like that. And you said the relationship goes in seasons. I've never heard of anyone talking about a relationship. It makes sense. It makes perfect sense, because you have your ups and your downs in a relationship, just like you have your ups and your downs in a business, in friendships, in fucking sport, in anything. There's ups and downs, but when you said it has its seasons, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. There's a season to reap and a season to sow and all that stuff. The other thing you said was Claire has qualities that you don't, that you admired and things like that. Reminds me of a story I heard. I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently back in the day, marriage wasn't just two people getting together. It was two families getting together through the man and the woman, because it was back then. So it was like Breakback Mountain, which I'm sure there was there back then. There's no one talked about it. But they join resources. And what that tells me is you'd only, like, it's kind of traditional, and you guys knew it, whether it was biological and evolutionary or anything like that. But you join resources with someone, even in a business point of view, because they have what you don't, and you have what they don't. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Alex Ferguson isn't going to have a relationship with Pep Guardiola because they have very similar, not styles, but they have traits.
Yeah, I think our strengths complement each other's weaknesses effectively. Yeah, and I suppose that's what makes us collectively stronger than apart. Yeah, I don't know, relationships. I'm lucky though. Like, don't get me wrong. I definitely recognize that I'm lucky that, I found my person early, and I didn't go through a lot of, I'm actually Claire's first partner. So I'm, there's lots of, I suppose, luck to it. Calculated luck for sure through decisions, but a lot of people don't find that they're people, or people put on a front at the start, and then you learn who they really are along the way, or whatever it may be. So I obviously recognize that luck in a way played its part. I don't know. That's my relationship. I'm happy. She's happy. We have 3 freaking kids, which is challenging, but I love it. Yeah.
I can't
Why
say
not?
anymore.
Hey?
Can't say you're going to have a 4th anymore.
No, snippy. But the one thing that I think we both are looking forward to is, being 70 years old together for 53 years or whatever, and, seeing our grandchildren grow up and be able to tell them that story, and, hopefully we obviously achieve that in our lifetime.
You will, mate. You will. Ants, you've had your fair share of relationships. There's got to be a few key nuggets that you could share with us and the 3 listeners that we may be lucky.
As I was sort of saying before, Jimmy was just touching on sort of building foundations early and stuff like that. Understanding, obviously, my younger relationships weren't really sort of based on that. They were more based on sex appeal, attraction, stuff like that. That's what it's all based on when you're young. You're young, dumb, and horny. That's what you're thinking about, right? So
me and Jimmy can't relate to that. We're based on sex. We've got 2 ugly mugs.
Well, yeah. What are you talking about, mate? There's nothing model material here. It's fine.
No, it's underneath the head.
No comment. But yeah, honestly, as you were touching on, those relationships weren't sort of built on those sort of things, and me being the person I was back then, I wasn't really looking for those things and really understanding those things. It was more just getting into relationships for the fact of not just sleeping around. It was just to sleep with that person, if that makes sense, and then being with that person. I feel like the younger generation these days are kind of not like that, but like that at the same time. So they're one or the other. They get to the point of they get in a relationship because they can get in a relationship because of that factor, or they're scared of the relationship and they just want to sort of sleep around. And obviously the male persona about it is, especially the young age, is that's what they want to do and they're prized for it. And while the female versions of it they kind of want to get into the relationships, I feel, because otherwise if they're sleeping around it makes them look bad and stuff like that, the stigma around it. But as I got older, obviously I just got out of a 5.5, 6 year relationship, and that was obviously a relationship that at first was sort of built on we met in high school. There was attraction back then. We had a little fling back then, but nothing ever sort of evolved from it. We met each other. I was 21, she was 20 at a club. Obviously attraction sprung like that. Then we sort of get into seeing each other and seeing what our likes and dislikes and stuff like that are about. And obviously the things that we sort of had in common, which is mainly music. So yeah, we kind of like clicked on those sort of levels. And as we got, I think we're seeing each other for about a 6-month period. After that 6-month period, I asked her out, and those were the times is when we did have those conversations. And obviously she at first didn't want to have kids. I'm the one that sort of influenced her into having kids, like wanting to have kids and stuff. That she was like, I never ever thought of actually having kids until I got into a relationship with you. So it's funny how like I didn't want to pressure her into it, but it's like I do want kids at the same time. So if we're going to sort of do this, there's no point in going further if you don't want to do that. If you don't want to do that, because it's what I want in life. I don't want to push you to have it if that's one really you don't want to. But the more she got to know us, and the more she, because Jimmy's got kids, we got a few like kids in the family and stuff like that. Obviously, it kind of was a bit daunting and stuff for her. There's a lot of kids running around, lots of grandchildren, not grandchildren, or lots of nieces and nephews. But yeah, it was a sort of different period. So that was like a big first sort of hurdle with getting into the relationship into like that. And obviously, things evolve and change over time. She gets to love the family more, and the love and the growth for it more was good for her in the end. So obviously that, as Jimmy said, those foundations were sort of built early, and 6 years go past, man. That's a long time. So yeah, it was a big learning curve, a big maturity sort of level, because we're going from 21 to 26. There's a lot of big things that happen in those like areas of life. Like 18 to 21, I was very young and dumb. Don't get me wrong, I'm still young and dumb. I'm only 26. But I've definitely learned a lot of things that, not just in the past sort of year, pretty much since we've been building the business together, but over those sort of like periods of time, and all those things I've learned, all those people I've met, the experiences I've had, and going through her with those experiences were definitely something that shaped us as we went along. So as Jimmy was saying, there's lots of goods, lots of bads. I definitely think there's seasons, as is touched on as well. But yeah, over the period of those 5 to 6 years, and then kind of got to a stage now where we sort of got to a period where we're sort of more focusing on ourselves and neglecting each other a little bit. And it sort of got to a stage where, since we were neglecting each other and putting our time and effort into everything else, it kind of got, I wouldn't say sour, but it kind of just got stale, you know what I mean? We weren't putting it into each other. So obviously that wasn't good. And it got to a sort of period where we got to a stage where we had to have the conversation. We had the conversation, and here I am today, a newly single man, as of 2 months ago. So big learning curve, lots of things, bumps and bruises along the way, but I wouldn't change any of it for the world. She's a lovely chick. She's a great chick. We went through so many things together, and without her for over those 5 years, I wouldn't be the man I am today. So yeah.
Where you obviously took that ownership on yourself, and she would have taken ownership on her part as well at that conversation crossroads a couple of months ago, right? So I think there's a lesson for the people listening and binge listening and stuff like that. I think there's a lesson in that, right? So what are the consequences, you think, if you hadn't have taken ownership of what was going on at the time?
Yeah.
Because just like I've said this a couple of times, and I think I said it on a couple of podcasts, your growth over the course, specifically during accreditation, was fucking insane. Right? You're like, I think you grew the most out of all of us watching you in those sessions. And where I saw it was the Zoom sessions that we would do after accreditation, after the workshops, right? So what do you think it would have led to if you didn't take ownership and have that conversation? Like where would you be now? Where would you be in 6 months? Where would you two have been in a year?
I think if we didn't have the conversation and we just sort of let things sort of sit, and it's kind of like where Jimmy was talking about our parents, how they kind of swept things under the rug and just kind of let things sit, and we don't have that conversation. It's a hard conversation. It's not an easy conversation to have. I understand that. But if you don't have those conversations and everything just goes on the way it's going, you start to resent each other and start to blame things for each other. It just turns the relationship against each other when we start pointing the finger. We didn't get to that point in time. I think we had probably a conversation, maybe six, or she come up to me a conversation, because we weren't, if I'm honest, we weren't very touchy and lovey over the last, the 6 months before period. And she actually had a conversation with me about it. And I was just like, look, as I pretty much said, we're putting a lot of time and effort into other things. Obviously I'm not I'm sorry for it and everything like that, and try and build a little bit on that, but nothing really changed in the end. And obviously got to that point, and since it got to that point, we needed to have that next conversation. So big ups to her for having that conversation in the first place, because if she didn't, obviously something that was bothering her in that stage, and it's not easy to have that conversation. So she's actually had the balls to do it, which is awesome. And I think that actually helped me have that conversation in the end, because she had that first initial one, and it was like, all right, well, if she's going to have to be doing that, and I'm not owning up to the stuff that she got, like that she had to bring that to me, and I wasn't owning up to those things, then I'm the one that's got to be like, look, I think it is at that point in time. So I think without the conversation, I think we're just going on and snowballing and just kind of just going for the same period. We're just, getting stuck in that sort of rut. And I think we're just start neglecting each other in the end. So, and in the end, we ended on really good terms. We're still friends. So it's never easy to, I know a lot of people look at me and they're like, I don't know how you do it. I've had so many conversations with people, it's like 6 years. I'm like, you can't just throw away 6 years like that. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many like different memories and experiences that we've had with each other. You can't just go, this is it. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's been a bumpy road, but it's been good so far.
Yeah, and like season, like Jimmy said, goes in seasons.
That last point is one point that I think is really valid, and one that really sits with me, is like you dedicate a long period of time, like a year's a year, but 6 years or 12 years or 20 years of marriage and 3 kids or whatever it is, and then you can't stand the person.
Yeah, I understand it.
Like, I don't get it. Like, how can you love someone? I get how you can fall out of love with someone, but to then just like despise that person, resent them, like, and then, I don't know. For me, it all comes back to the hard conversations, not settling for the wrong person, understanding what it is you're looking for. They're the key core fundamentals, because realistically, if you dedicate 6 years to someone and you can't even say hello to them in the street, or it makes no sense. Like, to me, it just dumbfounds me.
Yeah. With everything you shared to go over those 6 years, you can't really expect to just like, and I understand some relationships end in bad ways in terms and stuff like that, but like, time is a healer. And in the end, like, as we've noticed, like, people evolve over time. People are different people from those times. So like 10 years from now, they're not the same person that they were from that relationship. You know what I mean? So,
probably 1 year from now, depending on what they do, really.
Absolutely. So in the end, like, you can't just judge a person from those experiences. Obviously, if you have that, people say things in heated situations that they don't mean, or they do mean, but it gets to that stage, and it's like, you can't just hold that all against them just because of that one moment.
But the issue with that is it's a pent up, it's the old was it feather that broke the camel's back, or straw that broke the camel's back, right? That's all that is. When you're venting frustration at someone, it's only because you haven't dealt with the underlying 757 things that tick you off before that.
Like, that's a specific number, but it's 100% true.
But and ultimately, though, right? Again, it's trivial bullshit usually.
Yeah.
Not washing your dishes up, or this or that. Just have a fucking simple conversation. To me, it's not like, ultimately, in anything in life, you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to communicate, succinctly, straightforward, to the point, honest. Sure, you need some finesse at times or whatever, but ultimately, if you say something that's taken out of context and you explain yourself, I mean, I don't know.
I 100% agree with that. And I've got 2 cents. I'm going to end it real quick, because I have really enjoyed this, and I don't want to fuck it up by making this run too long. No, I think this is one of our most powerful episodes, but I do have two little things to add. That way I get a bit of content as well. Right. So those hard conversations that you talk about, right, I think that comes down to people not knowing. I don't know. There we go.
Hey, mate.
Hey, mate. Hopefully that didn't stuff up the recording.
You got some 2 cents to add in, yeah?
Yeah. I've got 2 cents to add in. I'll stitch it together. If it's 2 separate things, I'll just.
Yeah, I think it will be because it said recording, stop recording.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Hopefully it just paused. A lot of people don't know how to communicate. So that's probably why they can't have those hard conversations, right? If they physically don't know, like it might come natural to yourself, Jimmy, right?
Yeah.
Where it came from, wouldn't have a clue. But
yeah,
if it's a natural thing that you can do, I think the reason that it doesn't go right, like you said, they don't have those conversations, which is why it falls apart.
Yeah. So, I think, okay, so on that, not having hard conversations probably comes back to things like self-worth. Low self-confidence.
Could be a lot of things, right?
Lack of good, positive role model, or seeing that happen. And don't be wrong, as I say, our parents didn't exactly, but I could always have straightforward conversations with my mum. When it was about me, I could always have straightforward conversations with my dad. I could always have straightforward conversations with my grandma. So I suppose when you're exposed to it,
maybe,
that plays a part. But ultimately, I think a lot of the times it comes back to self-doubt and lack of self-belief. It's walking on eggshells because you don't want to do it. You don't want to be the one that jeopardizes it. You don't want to be the one that puts the strain or the pressure.
That's where comes in, right?
Yeah, has to.
That's
100%.
Right where if it is hard, I think like ownership could also come back to opportunity and gaps in knowledge, gaps in skill, gaps in soft skills, whatever we want to call it.
For sure.
When it goes wrong, when a relationship goes wrong or is going wrong, you have to take that ownership and go, right, have a look at it for what it is, have that self-awareness, have a look at it for what it is, and then go, I got a gap in my knowledge, I got to go fix it.
Yeah.
The second thing is more of a consequence. I touched on it with you in our afternoon chat, Jimmy, but I think it's got a bit of value. I don't know how to articulate it perfectly yet, but it comes back to a consequence of not taking ownership and responsibility and the effect it can have on another person. So, for example, and I've already said it to yourself, Jimmy, but for the listeners, for Anson, is my belief is the relationship ended because my previous relationship ended because I wasn't the man that I needed to be for her. She needed me to be, right? But the carry-on consequence is, what has that done to her in her future relationships? Does that mean she picks up stumps when someone else isn't being the man, and she doesn't build those communication skills and talk those things out? Like, have I inadvertently built that habit? I hope to God not. I'm just spitballing and speculating here, right?
Yeah.
But that's an inadvertent consequence of what may happen, and we have to be aware of that. We have to be aware that there's downsides. There's downsides to not grabbing not just relationships, but not grabbing your business by the throat, not grabbing and without the violence part of it, not grabbing it by the scruff of the neck and taking control and building your relationship, building your friendships, building your business, building absolutely everything, right? I don't think there's a downside. And you don't know the inadvertent consequences because we're all the star of the show in our own lives. But we're also a supporting cast to 8 other billion shows.
Yeah.
So we need to be that mature person. We need to ownership of what we do for other people. I'm big on, Jimmy, for what you've gone through with the miscarriages and stuff like that. My belief is that needs to be shared because you've gotten through it, because you know what's on the other side, because you know how to get through it. Other people are going to do that. I have that sort of contribution belief that will just help humanity.
Yeah, for sure.
Like what Mosey was talking about with Tom Bilyeu, that he's going to get to where the greats are faster than they have because he has the greats, and the people after him will get there faster.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I think that that's really important, that we take ownership for our lives because it has consequences on other people. And that's a bigger motivator in people's lives than what happens to us. Because I won't go to the gym. I won't go to the gym and I'll eat junk food because if I eat it once, it doesn't do anything. But compounded, not going to the gym and eating garbage every single day, not taking ownership for my relationships and myself and being the man that I need to be has consequences for other people as well. That's my 2 cents.
Agree. But ultimately, you need to, are you happiest or are you happy with, the man in the mirror? When everything's said and done. And I think that's what that initial, like, not communicating the way you want it, not having a relationship that you want, all the rest of it is like, before getting into relationships, who are you?
Yeah.
What do you want from it? Like, what are your expectations for you? Because ultimately, I think that's where the buck needs to start and end. As I said before, you need to be happy. She needs to be happy. You need to be happy together. But your happiness, you shouldn't be the one that makes her happy, and vice versa. Because ultimately, if your happiness is predicated on someone else, they can let you down at any moment. They can always make a wrong decision. But your standards are your standards. So
yeah,
I think that. Okay, sorry.
I was just going to say, I feel like in relationships, you sort of got to have your own sort of path. You got to understand you and what you want to be about, and then you have to have someone that fits that mold. You don't have to be someone that has to change everything for them and be the person they have to be for them. It's just a person that sort of fits your mold and like goes with everything that is your sort of routine. And if they fit into it, it's fine. Like, obviously you're going to change little bits in here. You're going to have dinner dates and stuff like that, or whatever it is that goes in with your plans. But you don't want to have someone that like you just drop everything for, or you change everything around your schedule and be someone completely different to the person that they're trying to be in the first place.
Because it's a front, right?
Well, that's exactly right.
And you can only keep it up for so long.
Exactly. So you got to understand what your schedule, what you're about, what you're doing. And once they come into that mold and they can push you into that circumstance, and you can push them into the circumstance of, you can still live your life, and then we can have our life together at the same time.
Aligned. Absolutely. Very important.
Beautiful. I'm going to end it there because I think short and sharp. I really didn't want to go on as long as I did. I wanted to cut it at half an hour because I think what you two said was fucking super powerful and that short, sharp one. But hopefully we still have people listening. If you got value from this episode, which I personally think this is our best, please do share it with someone or let us know what you got out of it. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But the main important thing is please do share it with someone if you got value out of it. Boys, that was a fucking powerful one for me. Don't know about you guys, but
that was good stuff. Very good.
I think we're really onto a great theme. And I hope other people see it too. So I'll kill
40 years, you get less for murder, mate. You get less for murder.
You kid.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Be good.
Yeah.
Cheers.